Alyssa's right there.
Right there.
Getting
Okay.
coffee.
Yep. Alyssa, okay if we get started? Okay, great. Great. I hereby call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Tuxedo Union Free School District on this Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now call roll.
Heather Kidda,
Present.
Alyssa Hornet,
Present.
Kimberly Breland,
Present.
Dan Castricone,
Here.
William Clark. Here. Bill Gibbons,
Here.
Gary Hefner.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move into the public comment section of the meeting. If any members of the public have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait to be called on by the board president and state your name. Okay. None at this time, so we're going to move on to the presentations, starting with the budget presentation.
Well, I was going to ask if anyone would mind if we alter the agenda because we have some special guests here tonight. We have the salutatorian and valedictorian tonight, so if everybody's okay, could we make that first?
Do you need a motion to amend the agenda?
No, that's not an official agenda.
Okay, forget it then.
That okay?
Great.
All right. Excellent. So, tonight we have the pleasure of putting the pins on our salutatorian and our valedictorian. And tonight we have our valedictorian is Reggie Wanse. Okay, I'm just going to say a few words about Reggie. Reggie, don't blush, okay? I'm going to put you in the limelight. Is that all right? So, in addition to excelling in all of his academic subjects, he's shown exceptional aptitude for AP Calculus, AP Statistics, and Chemistry. Outside of the classroom, he participates in National Honor Society, National Junior Honor Society, Student Council, Jazz Band, Choir, Orchestra, and Drama Club. The only thing he's missing is the S on his chest. After high school, he plans to major in computer science. He's already been accepted to several wonderful institutions such as SUNY Albany, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, SUNY Buffalo, and Rochester Institute of Technology. He hasn't committed yet, have you, Reggie? The last time we spoke, you didn't, okay, because he's still waiting to hear from a few other schools. So congratulations to valedictorian Reggie Wanse. You want to come up, Mr. Principal? There you go, sir. You can do the honors. Reggie, congratulations. Okay, next we have salutatorian, Mr. Jake Sandek. All right, while he excels in all academic areas, he's shown exceptional proficiency in the social sciences and humanities, particularly AP European History, AP Government English. Jake is a remarkably well-rounded individual who also partakes in several extracurricular clubs, activities, and sports. These include JV basketball, JV baseball, varsity basketball, National Junior Honor Society, National Honor Society, Student Council, and Interact Club. While he's not made a final decision on college, He still has his search narrowed down to 3 prestigious institutions: State University of New York at Binghamton, SUNY Albany, and Ramapo College of New Jersey. Congratulations again, Jake. Okay, sorry to mix things up like that.
Want to let them escape?
So we'll go back to the,
Get them a moment.
you folks are welcome to stay for our exciting meeting tonight, or if you care to, it is 7:12. I'm sure there's a table waiting for you at one of our local establishments. So whichever you guys prefer to do. All right? We'll meet you over there.
And relax.
Congratulations again.
Sometimes they're like, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah. You're an optimist. I have no idea what they're signing up for.
So we're going to go back on the agenda to the meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our February meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Now, we're moving on to the presentation, starting with the budget presentation. This is a
Yes.
follow-up to the presentation that we had in our last meeting. We're focusing on expenditures, Part 1.
Okay, Mr. Weir, our business official.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to our second budget workshop for the 24-25 school year. At the last budget meeting, we discussed the preliminary revenue estimates. Tonight, we're going to start delving into the expenditure portion of the budget. We are presenting the expenditure budget in the same format as the state's Uniform System of Accounts, which is in a function object code basis. This also happens to be the same format for our audited financial statements. So with that in mind, we'll be reviewing about half of the expenditure codes tonight and the balance in the next meeting, which is scheduled for April 10th. The codes we will be looking at now are Board of Education, the Office of the Chief School Administrator, Finance, Staff, Central Services, Special Items, Instructional, Admin, and Improvements.
And this is a very preliminary budget, right? And subject to change, correct, Brian?
That's correct.
As we don't have the final numbers from the state education, from the commissioner and from the state legislature, I should say. So we're still waiting for those numbers, and we're also paring down our budget and doing a lot of internal review of the budget process. So it is subject to change, but we'll let you know what those changes are, any changes that we make, correct?
I know Albany is unreliable, but when do we expect those numbers, best case scenario from Albany?
Well, by law, they're supposed to have by April 1st, but the last couple of years, it's been late. So it's anybody's guess, Bill.
Okay.
So,
Does it make sense to work through a best case, worst case?
yeah, that's what we're kind of preparing for, absolutely.
So again, the categories we're looking at are not unique to Tuxedo. They were determined by the state. And quite frankly, they're not totally without their quirks. As you will see with this first portion of the budget, it is largely a rollover of the same services that were provided in the prior year, but I'll be sure to point out anything that's new as we go through it. Okay, so first we're going to look at the cost of the Board of Education operations. This includes board workshops, the annual school board meeting, and supplies and materials. Next, we have 1040, you see District Clerk. That's the official secretary of the Board of Education, and this is an area that includes workshops to keep current and supplies and materials. And finally, we have the district meeting, which is the annual budget and board member elections, popularly known as the budget vote. This area includes legal notices, the cost of election workers, printing ballots, renting the voting machines, and related expenses. Overall, you can see it is a 3.1% increase across these account codes. This increase is primarily due to an increase of the costs for the budget vote supplies, more specifically the ballots, which have new requirements going forward. Here we have the Chief School Administrator Office. This includes purchase services, conferences, subscriptions, meeting expenses, supplies, and materials, and the salaries of the superintendent and the superintendent's secretary. We see a slight increase here. It's $5,000 or 1.9%. Okay, now we'll take a look at finance. Included here is business administration, auditing, treasurer, purchasing, and tax collections. So under business administration, that provides oversight of the district's accounting and financial operations. It includes the salaries of myself and accounts payable, as well as a number of purchase services through BOCES. Also paid out of these codes are such services as bond counsel fees, legal notices, conferences, Medicaid claiming services, and state aid planning. Under that, 1320, you see auditing, which includes a multitude of auditors that school districts are required to have, including the independent auditor who opines on our financial statements, and the claims auditor who reviews every single check before it goes out the door. Then we have the treasurer category. This includes an off-site bookkeeper along with our full-time deputy treasurer. We also have the payroll function that runs out of this code, and that is handled by our deputy treasurer. As you can see, this actually is showing an overall decrease of 1.3%. That's primarily due to we were able to discontinue one software package that we've used in prior years, which we determined was more of a luxury than a necessity. Staff. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, this category is a bit of a misnomer. It is called staff, but it actually encompasses our outside counsel, Shaw, Perelson, May, and Lambert, who is on an annual retainer for legal services. They are not part of the district staff, but are required to be reported here. It also includes our Human Resources Department, which is made up of our Personnel Director and a number of purchase services provided by BOCES. As you can see on the far right, we are showing an increase of 10%, which really comes down to two reasons. We had a part-time employee who was made full-time during the current school year. That's one. Also, we took two existing services, and we basically just rehoused them. So we already had the services, but now we're paying them out of this 1430 code. Those services are OWAS, which is a platform used for hiring, and ASOP, which is a software we use for tracking employee attendance.
And those were down in the 2110 codes, right, Brian? The
Yeah, that's correct.
instruction. So it's just a reclassification.
Okay, central services. This encompasses our buildings and grounds department, security, central printing, and central data processing. Operations is where we account for the custodial costs and utility costs. Maintenance, on the other hand, is the building maintenance staff and grounds department. We see an increase in both of these numbers, and it can really be broken down as follows. We have a building condition survey, which is required by New York State every 5 years, so we happen to be entering that year 5. Initial quote for that is $15,000. We have contractual salary adjustments. That's adding another $15,000 to these codes. We have projected increase to utilities, which is 9,000, and there's some ongoing services related to the energy performance contract. Then under that you have health and safety, which, as you can see, this is showing a dramatic increase, and that's really due to the addition of a security officer at the front of both GFB and GGM, and that's going to add about 100,000 to that code.
And that's part of our initiative to enhance our security measures in the district.
And then central printing, which is largely flat, that's the postage machine and all related printage and mailing costs. Overall, we're up 12.7% under central services. Special items is our liability insurance, school association dues, judgments and claims, and BOCES administrative and capital charges. The big insurance items that we're really looking at here, it's general and legal liability coverage. We have automobile, building and contents, student accident, and cyber liability coverage. The biggest provider we work with is NYSER, which is New York Schools Insurance Reciprocal. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't have the exact premium for next year, but we were able to receive an estimate, and that's included in this number at this time.
So that may change when we get the actual,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we were given a range, and we're using the high end of the range for this to be conservative, but until we get the premium, we won't know for sure.
Okey-doke.
And we have had some claims this year. School association dues includes a number of annual memberships. Most notably is the New York State School Boards Association. And then next we have the refund of real property, which is really just a protection against future tax certs. Now you might notice in this year's budget that was 0. Now we're adding 20. You know, it's a good practice to include some type of protection there, but especially in lieu of the fact that our reserve had been depleted during the 22-23 school year.
And that was the golf course, the golf course, right? Tax cert, yep.
The country club, yep. Then we have BOCES administrative costs, which represents.
So that would be going forward every year. There'll be a number there.
Unless we are able to finance that reserve.
Okay.
BOCES administrative costs represents the district's share of OU BOCES admin. This is something we're required to cover as a component of BOCES. And also the BOCES capital expenses, which are for building rentals and capital outlays. This category is up 12.8%, and that's largely due to the creation of that property refund budget item. So here we have instructional, admin, and improvement. This includes coordination and supervision of curriculum and instruction on a district-wide basis, a building basis, the administration of PPS, Pupil Personnel Services, curriculum writing, and mentoring and professional development costs. So in here we have the salaries of the building principals and their main office staff, which really makes up the lion's share of these expenditures. Also included here are some related BOCES services and supplies and materials. The category is up 1.9%, and that's largely due to an intentional increase to professional development spending.
And that line may change more where the principals and I are meeting with folks from BOCES, and we may be adding, because we have a lot of initiatives for next year, so we may have to add more to that line as the budget develops.
And why did you get rid of summer curriculum writing?
Well, that's one of the things we're looking at. We put that in there last year because of the math curriculum that we had done. So we may be adding some more money to that line as well. We're in the process of reviewing all that right now.
Yeah, so that was a one-off project, but it could certainly be
Right.
back.
Okay.
Finally, so this is just a look at the school tax rates over the last 5 years. As you can see, if you compare 23-24 to that first year, we're seeing a 1.81% increase. I think especially in light of the inflation that we've seen over the last few years, that's a pretty remarkable number. I know we've spent many hours over the last couple of months with the goal of making this budget operate as efficiently as possible. And that's really it for me at this point. We'll have an estimate of the tax rate in mid-April. So it'll be at the next board meeting in all likelihood.
Thank you, Brian.
Are there any questions?
And we'll be having a meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee very shortly to go delve a little bit more deeper into this as the process continues. We'll be doing that within the next week or two.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ooh, cool. Yeah, that was.
And then we're doing the New York State assessment.
Yes, unless, if you don't mind, maybe we could do Tom so he can go home with his family.
That sounds like
Does
a
it-
good plan.
Anybody mind if we swap the architect with the assessment? Anybody? Okay. Are you ready, Tom? Okay, terrific. I was going to do this as part of the superintendent's, but Tom was available, so we thought we would have him do a little slideshow because sometimes a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you get to see exactly what improvements are happening.
And I haven't been here in a while, so it's good to see everybody again.
Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. And get ourselves all set up. Again, I'm Tom Ritzendaler with CS Arch, right here in Newburgh. So I wanted to give you a capital update on a number of different topics. Just a little agenda. So we're going to talk about the emergency flooring replacement from the flooding, which is pretty much complete. We'll talk about the high school roof project, show you some progress of that. Talk about some 24-25 capital project recommendations. We'll talk about the structural assessment at George Baker, which is on your agenda for this evening, and then the projects that are proposed for the 24-25 transfer to capital. So it looks like a long agenda, but we'll get through it pretty quick. And I always like to show this to begin with because this really keeps us focused. Everything about school construction is to improve education for children, and that always has to remain our focus. Not all of it is visible, of course, but that also keeps the buildings healthy and safe for the students. And certainly we're talking about things that improve the classroom spaces for the kids as well. So let's talk about the flooring replacement. See, quick slide. We're about 99% complete, so we're really in punch list. We've got a few things to button up with some transition strips and things with the completed floor. So I'll give you a little before and after. So in case you haven't been in this section of the building to see the finished product. So as you know, this was flooded out. So all of the flooring in this section of the building was removed, and we went in with nice new LVT flooring, similar to what we did at the flood from the bathroom. So again, the beauty of the LVT flooring is that it's a no wax floor, so you don't have to strip wax, you don't have to replace the wax. It uses just soap and water for cleaning procedures, and so it's taking all the chemicals out of your building, so it's a much healthier product for that. And I think,
Tom?
quite frankly, it looks a heck of a lot nicer.
Where else can we have another flood?
Yeah, well, my question was, what happens in a flood situation with this type of floor? Does it need to still be taken up again, or is this flood
So-
resistant?
This actually is very resistant
Okay.
to those flood events. It doesn't lift like the old VCT flooring. It's a very different material. So we've had this where it has happened after we put this tile in place, and in almost every case, we haven't had to put it back down again.
Great.
So
Excellent.
that was the objective. You know, it's not to say that if it was saturated for a long period of time that might not have to happen. This, of course, was one of those claim events through NYSER that you'll see. But they've been very good about working with the district and working with us to make sure that the district is getting everything that they were impacted and getting that addressed and fixed. And of course, they're paying the bill, which is nice too.
Excellent. Well, it looks great. Thank you.
It really does look nice. I'm sure the kids appreciate it as well. So let's talk about the roof replacement project at Baker High School. So we did have the roof inspection by the manufacturer. That was earlier this week. Actually, it wasn't. It was earlier last week, not this week. Roof chimney cap repair is about 95% completed. That's one of the change orders I believe is on your agenda for tonight. And I'll go through all of those with you so you understand what those are. We again did change order to address some of the dormer ridge cap shingles that were in severe disrepair. We were concerned they were going to start leaking. And it was pretty consistent across all those dormers, which was pretty unusual. But we have gotten all of those repaired. And then we've got the skylight reglazing, and that's going to start in the coming weeks. We've gone through shop drawing process. Now we're just waiting for the material to land on site. That's going to be really, really exciting because I hope at some point we can reopen the skylights into the auditorium the way it was originally designed and intended. So it would be very, very exciting, and I'll talk to you about a change we made with the glazing in a second. So here you can see the chimney repair. That was pretty much non-existent, so we had to have this really remade and then put back in place. They haven't cleaned it up, so it looks a little dirty, but they hadn't washed it at that point. You can see the new roof, beautiful. White's going to reflect the light, and you can see some of the ventilator boxes. That green is one of the ventilator boxes. Those are true and original to the construction, and we're trying to preserve as much as we can of the original construction of this building. Certainly a piece of pride within the community. So, and you can see in the picture on the far right, you can see those ridges, and you can see the slightly more tan ridge line, and that's the replacement shingles that we did at the top of each of the dormers to address the deteriorated condition.
And that's part of the building envelope, right, Tom?
That's part of the building envelope.
To protect us from any more floods.
Very, very important. And they were pretty severely deteriorated, which was what was surprising. So
Why do you think that is?
it's hard to say. It was such a concentrated, it was so concentrated on each and every dormer, which was pretty unusual. So either
Did
they,
you use a different material this time?
Yeah,
That might be more resistant?
yeah, we used a heavier material. We always like to use a 30-year shingle, and I always say when you get something like that, a lot of it's installation. But I think it was probably in the manufacture of those tiles, because it really happened with just the ridge portions of those. So
Are those the same tiles that are the lighter, or the worn shingles? Or is it a different ridge shingle?
this is where this little.
It's like, it would be.
Right
this
here.
part.
Right, it's the brown piece, but is it the
This piece
same
right
shingles that are used on the roof? I don't know much about roofs.
They're probably a different brand of shingle, and I'm wondering whether or not the manufacturer of these shingles, whether they had a problem. These are wearing okay, or on the
Okay,
sides.
the
Now,
sides.
the water hits them at a different angle, but the ridges, for whatever reason, all were heavily worn. So we thought, this is the time to do it. We had the roofer on site, and they could address it at that time so that we don't have to worry about a potential leak to the inside of that building, because leaks on the inside of Baker would really pose a lot of problems. And now we don't have the leak at the interior of the auditorium anymore as well. So that's a big plus with respect to the roof replacement itself. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the changes in construction. I'll start this by premising that we are well within budget. So we had really good numbers when we took the bids for this. We did do some additional roof drain installations where we replaced roof drains that needed to be addressed when we got into the roof. We did one of them we did as a drain insert. So we did an insert instead of replacing the whole drain. We did the chimney cap repair. You can see that a lot of labor involved in that number. We did the dormers, as you can see, along all the ridges of each of those with the new shingles. So the big number, of course, is the skylight glazing change. So we had originally specified this as single glaze to match what was historically accurate. We didn't actually think the thickness of an insulated unit would actually be possible. The contractor actually brought this to our attention, and he said, we've looked at the installation because, remember, we're preserving the copper skylight itself because it has historic significance. He said, we have enough variability in the cap piece that we can actually install insulated glazing. Would you like to go that direction? And we certainly brought it to Jeff's attention. We certainly recommended it because, again, the thermal performance will be much better related to that space opening up into the auditorium. So we did make that change. It's also, of course, safety glazing to meet all of the new standards as well. We did some brick repointing. We did this on a square foot basis. We started out with a number we thought was going to be in the $30,000 range. When we actually mapped it out on the roof, you can see it's a little over $7,000. And then we had looked at doing the clock repair within this contract when we had several meetings with the company that was going to be doing the clock repair, which we wanted to do as a restoration. They were more interested in doing it as a kind of a redo of the clock and not really following kind of the historical aspects of the clock in the tower. And so we then said that we're just going to remove this from the contract and we'll do it outside of the contract. It just didn't make any sense. This company just wasn't going to do it to preserve the clock tower. And actually doing a lot more research on it, even what you see now with the clock tower and the clock is not accurate to the way it was originally constructed. And so we want to make sure we're preserving the history of that and doing it the right way. So in case everyone knows it's got a little red roof on it right now, well, that's not original. The original color was white. The dials right now are gold. The original color was black. So we'd like to really restore it back to its historic significance. So that's actually been drawn up, and we're going to be looking at getting that done. After we did also realize that it wasn't listed in the resolution for the roof repair. So we have to take that up to SED to get it done. So we're going to have to go submit it to SED, and then once it gets through SED, we'll then put that out and get credible bids to get that work done.
I have a question. So all these numbers here that we're looking at, those are the same numbers that were presented to us initially, or
Correct.
they're and there's not really any change?
So we had a much larger budget for this, and when we took the bids, we had a significant contingency. So these are covered in the overall budget, and we're actually still significantly under that budget.
Okay, thank you.
What's the ballpark time frame on getting the clock fixed, restored?
It'll all depend on how generous SED is with us.
Right.
So
No things are out of control, but 1 month, 1 year, 10 years.
So what I would say is probably if SED stays on their current schedule for reviews, I would say we would be looking at doing it either late fall or in the following spring.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, right now they're running about 6 months. Now they have indicated to us, but it's not going to be until the end of the year. They are going to bring third-party reviews back, but that's not going to be until the end of the year. I was just in all-day meetings with the education department last week with the coordinator of the Office of Facilities Planning, and so she expressed that they're going to be starting to bring back the third-party reviews, but it won't be set up until the end of the year.
So let me just tell you what that means. The state education department doesn't fund the facilities planning department sufficiently, and it's costing New York State taxpayers billions of dollars annually. They have a very small staff to review 700 school districts, which have multiple buildings. So the things backlog like crazy. And so districts aren't able, until you get that approval, you can't go ahead with the project. So this stuff backs up and backs up and backs up. So a project you want to do now winds up getting done next year or the year after that. And the escalation costs on construction keep going up. And they used to just be, what, the 3% range, Tom, or for many years?
2.5%, 3%.
But now it's gone, since
Now it's 5
COVID,
to
it's
7%.
gone. So this is costing the New York State taxpayers billions of dollars. So it is very frustrating to districts because we want to get work done and we have to wait. So what they had done in the past is they came up with this thing called third-party reviewers. Since they don't have the staff, they would allow a district to pay a third-party architect to do their review, and they would aid you on it. And then for some reason, they stopped doing that, and projects were getting approved and getting done, and I don't know why they stopped it, but they stopped it, and now they're thinking about getting it back on track, which is going to help. And it's kind of worth spending the extra few bucks to get that done so you can move forward with your projects.
Yeah, fees were based on the scale of the project you submitted. My firm, CS Arch, did a lot of reviews for them as well. We were on their selected architects list to review projects. We have also heard, though, they're going to trim the list down this time. I think they're going to eliminate maybe some of the firms that were underperforming or that they had issues with. So it's going to look a little different. So we're kind of wait and see how they unroll this new system.
So again, with the state, Garrett, to answer your question, it's the same question as with the state aid. We cross our fingers and hope for the best.
Sometimes we get lucky, and I can, get them to understand that a project is a very quick, 30-minute review, and they can do that. They aren't doing face-to-face reviews anymore. That's like a thing of the past. It's changing, and a lot of the reviewers now are new to the department, so they're just learning the whole process, and so it's taken on a different tenor. So wanted to talk a little bit about the 2024 capital project. I don't know whether Jeff has presented any of this to the board, but we're obviously in design with this work. Obviously the cupola and the clock tower repairs, we're pretty much done with that. The security vestibules at the two buildings and the new generator for George F. Baker.
Right, we spoke about this last year because we put out a referendum to the community for capital projects too, and these things were all listed in that. We talked about that in detail last year. So there's going to be another proposition to the community this year. So you have to get voter approval to create a capital reserve, and then you have to go the following year to get voter approval to actually spend the money. So we talked about it last year, but you may not remember because it was a year ago.
And on each of those three line items, do we know approximate expense of each?
Yeah, I think the total of these three lines, I believe, was $1,350,000 total.
But individually, how does that break down?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm good, but I'm not that good. But I could get there.
And remember, the security vestibules, Senator Skoufis was also getting us a $75,000 grant towards that too.
And
So
we've been working through that, which is very generous of them. Want to talk a little bit about the structural assessment to bring the board up to speed. It's on your docket for tonight. There is an issue with some cracking in the masonry walls at the two stair towers that are on either side of the George F. Baker High School addition. And we've been monitoring it for a little bit, and it seems like it's progressively getting a little bit worse. And so we brought in Pastor Associates, who's a structural engineering consultant that we utilize, and they took a look at it, and they have presented us with a proposal for doing a little bit of a deeper investigation into trying to understand what the cause of this cracking is, and to make sure that it's not going to pose any greater concern into the future. So they want to put in place crack monitoring, so that's pretty standard. They also want to bring individuals in to do some what's called GPR, ground penetrating radar. We also use it on wall systems because it allows us to understand what the reinforcing within the walls is, because they think there may be some potential for a design deficiency in how the structure was developed. And it's interesting because the cracking that we're seeing is exactly the same in both stair towers. I mean, if it was just a settlement issue or all, you'd expect to see it in one, but it's the same. It's a very same condition in both towers on both sides of the building.
Any
And it's
reason?
not-
Sorry.
sorry.
No, you go ahead, please.
And it's not happening in any of the classrooms
No.
in between the
Only at the towers.
stair?
And I'll show you. You can see this is way up at the. So the cracks come all the way through up here and across. You can see the bigger.
See them here.
Do we have any safety concerns?
Not the engineer isn't concerned it's going to collapse or anything like
Yeah.
that. He isn't concerned about that, but he does really think we should monitor it and really understand from. And we've got the original construction drawings from this building. They do want to evaluate where the reinforcing is in this wall, and then from there we can understand what's happening and then present a mitigation. You know, so we got to take it progressively, step by step. The first step is once if you authorize this tonight, I can get them working on the next phase of the work so that we can get more information. And this isn't just at the other thing I wanted to point out is it's not just up at this eave. The cracks go all the way down the wall, comes across this window lintel, down the sides of the window, and it's actually on the floor below as well. It's very, very strange.
When was this constructed, Tom?
This was 2003, 1, 3?
It was 2000, about 2003. It was about,
2003? That's when it was finished. So they started in 2001, right? Yeah.
Are the cracks going on the outside as well,
The
or
cracks
just
are not on the outside.
inside?
It's only on the inside walls. Yeah.
Do we have any recourse
We do.
for? Okay.
we do. And there is no statute of limitations for a poor design, so if it's a
That
poor
would be a
design,
good question. There's no statute of limitation if there's a design deficiency here, right?
so we
So-
will be going after, if it is a structural thing, we will likely be asking David to contact the architect, the original architect, right?
Is that original architect still in business?
They are,
Okay, good.
yep.
But we have to take it progressively. The first is what's happening, right? First is we have to understand what's happening and why. The next is, okay, how do we mitigate it? And
So what are we being asked to authorize in terms of price?
So we didn't specifically put in a budget line for this because we just noticed it when we were doing the visual inspection. So, I mean, there is, in the operations and maintenance budget, there are, you know, we don't necessarily budget every single item. There's some contingency money in there. So we're asking you to approve having this engineering firm, Passero, do all their monitoring of this to see, you know, what the cause is and how bad it's,
So
you
we
know,
have money in this year's budget
in,
to cover.
in the operations and maintenance budget, yeah.
Great.
And
Yep.
for this, how long does the monitoring take, and will there be a definitive answer after they monitor, or could they monitor for a long time and go, we don't really know?
Well, we're going to ask them for a report, right, based on what GPR and you know, the crack monitoring typically is done over time, and sometimes that could take months, if not up to a year.
Yep.
But certainly, I'm expecting a report, you know, within the next couple of months about, you know, based on their other investigations, what do they think is causing this, and what do they think are the potentials for mitigating this, you know, so that it doesn't continue to get worse.
Thank you.
And then the proposed 24-25 transfer to capital work, if you happen to see this in the budget. So the first line is repair to some of the column bases at the George F. Baker High School. That's right in front. If you look around the sides of it, you'll see that it's all starting to crumble away. So we really need to catch that before it gets much worse. The masonry repair and repointing at the George G. Mason Elementary School. This is repointing also to prevent continued moisture that is getting into one of the classrooms as well as along the corridor at the upper level of the elementary school. That right now is the first price that we got from a contractor. I'm expecting that it's probably going to come in a little bit lower. I have some recommendations for the contractor to approach this a little bit differently with what their first proposal was. Fencing at the playground. This has always been an issue, keeping the fence in good repair. That's a pretty minor cost. And then we have the mitigation of the drainage issue at the Baker High School. That's the area, well, this is the masonry wall that needs to be the counter flashing, and then some parge coating at the adjoining section to eliminate that water from penetrating into the interior of the building. And then you can't really see it, but right here there's a slot drain, if you've ever been on the site. And in heavy rainstorms, this whole area floods, and it floods into the building. so, which we just fixed. So, this is to replace that slot drain with a much larger, deeper unit and then run it to a nearby catch basin, which is in front, which is up here, just in this area, to be able to properly handle the capacity of all of the water that collects. Because remember, this is all running downhill into the building. It's really a interesting design. So it just can't handle the capacity, especially in the very heavy. So we don't want to have continued damages time after time after time. So that was just to recall. So that's about $16,000, and that's was a quote that we already have.
To prevent flooding right now, what the operations and maintenance department's doing is they're putting sandbags out and putting the trucks with the plows to kind of redirect the water away so we don't have another flood. But hopefully the drainage will take care of it, because we're getting a lot more rainfall,
Yep.
right, Tom?
Yeah, we have enough backslope, even though that's lower. The manhole, the storm basin we're talking about going to is extremely deep. It's like 12, 13 feet deep. We'll come into that and be able to capture all that water so that we could adequately take it off site.
Great. So what Tom just mentioned, we didn't get to this part of the budget. This is what's called transfer to capital. It'll be down in the 9000 series codes. So we've done quite a bit of capital projects. We've done the energy performance contract. We've done, we're doing this is the second flood repair. And we've done work to the front steps. And so you can either bond work out, you can use the capital reserve work. You know, we have $2 million in capital reserve money, which we've been spending down. But it'd be nice to put money in the transfer to capital every year and just do a lot of maintenance that way, because the most expensive maintenance is deferred maintenance. Preventive maintenance is the cheapest. Tom, wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So we really, at some point, would like to get that line up. I know we want to keep the taxes low, and we're waiting for the farms to come in, but if we're able to, we'll see as we balance out the budget if we're able to do these things. But if we don't do them this year, we certainly want to do them in the next couple of years as
Right.
well.
Especially this drainage. You know, we tend to see, for whatever reason, we're having heavier and heavier rains every year. It's really having an impact. Bless you.
Wait,
And-
so the ask then is that 78,000 be moved to the capital project?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in the operating budget on the 9000 series, and what we do is we transfer the money out of the operating budget into the capital fund.
Okay.
And that was it. That's all I have.
Yeah, quick question for you, thank you. What's the warranty on the roof for,
Warranty on the roof is full 20 years.
20
We
years.
have to have that. In fact, it might be more. Hey, let me double check that, and I'll get that information to Jeff. We might have done the 30-year, but we have to do that. You know, to qualify for building aid, you have to get a warranty of at least 20 years.
Tom, also, I just want to say that this year, and you saw in the budget as presented before by Brian, we have a number in there for a building condition survey, which is required every 5 years. So what the architects are going to do is they're going to examine all the buildings in the district. They started doing it last year with the visual inspection, which was required as a one-time situation. But what we're going to do with that is we're going to create a 5-year facilities plan, and Tom is going to, and his team is going to identify things. Health and safety items will be first. So we're going to prioritize things, and then we'll be able to put a plan together, how we're going to finance these and which projects we're going to do first. So we just, as we got in here, we did the EPC because we would not have had heat that first year had we not done that $1.4 million project. So we're just trying to address things as they come up for right now.
Right. And this is your year for the BCS. Remember, the state staggered. You were the last year of the stagger. The last visual inspection we did was in '22, required by the state. And so this will be a similar process, a little deeper dive, though, because it's a building condition survey.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Anybody
Thank
else?
you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to start spending more and more time talking about curriculum instruction going forward.
thank God.
Okay? So tonight, I've got our principals, Dr. Jean Paul and Mr. Kamar, and they are going to, as promised, present to you the state assessments. We were trying to we're not trying to make these meetings excessively long, so we're going to do this in a couple of different segments. So tonight, what they're going to do is they're going to review ELA for the 3 to 8 assessments, and they're also going to do the Regents. In a future meeting, we're going to do 3 through 8 math and the honors results. Is that right, Jared? Yep. And Dr. Jean Paul? Yep. Okay.
All right, good evening, and thanks for having us. Dr. John Paul and I are happy to be here tonight to begin our discussions here regarding assessments. And as Mr. White pointed out, we're going to talk tonight. Our focus will be our literacy results across our 3-8 tests as well as our GFP Regents exam data. This is all from the spring of last year. And Dr. John Paul is going to talk to you tonight about some of our ELA results, and then I'll come back in with some of our Regents exam data.
Thank you, Mr. Kamar. Again, thank you to the board for allowing us to present this information. As Mr. Kamar already said, this data is from spring of 2023. And just to keep in mind, all of this data that we're presenting tonight, ELA, but what we will present in the future, represents the new next generation learning standards. So as a result of that, last year was the first time New York State tested students using the next generation learning standards. So as a result, it's really challenging. There's no comparison in terms of from one year to the next. So this year coming up, we'll be able to certainly look at the data a little more closely.
Wait. Could you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're not done with that.
It says count. Is that 5 students took it?
So yes, he advanced the slide a little bit before I wanted to. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. So just keep in mind, as we're looking at local comparison numbers, so if you'll see there, highlighted in green is GGM, and you'll see that the number of students that were tested were 13. This is last year's 3rd grade class. We had a total of 17 students, but 13 of them were tested. And so when you're looking at count, you're looking at actual student numbers. That's a great question. So you can see for levels 3 and 4, we had 38%, a little over 38% of students reach a level 3 and 4, which is the level of proficiency. And you'll notice in this local comparison, we're looking at George Grant Mason compared to other counties, Dutchess, Orange, Sullivan, and Ulster. And the next slide.
So if, just to make sure I understand that,
Sure.
Are we saying that 8 of the 13 are below where New York State thinks they should be?
So yes, according to this data, you'll see level 2 and level 1. That's 8 of the 13.
So here's level 1, there's 2, that's 15%, 6 is 46, 3, 23, and 4. You following?
Yep, I get it.
If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
And as you're looking at level 2, one of the things that I've always really spent a lot of time with, which we are going to be doing a lot of work with our staff, when students are at a level 2 level, there's a range that the state gives in terms of ranking them in that area. And sometimes it's very, very insignificant, so to speak, in terms of bringing a student that may be at a high 2 to a low 3. So even though you're seeing that number of 6, there are things that we can really focus on from an instructional standpoint, whether that be, increasing the content vocabulary that students are familiar with as they see on the test, and also just the way questions may be worded. So there's a lot that we can do in those areas to help students as they are taking those assessments be able to perform at a higher level. But as we look at the next slide.
These are the tests that a lot of the parents opted out
Exactly.
That was
of
my
having
question.
their
Exactly.
students take.
The 4 that didn't take, were those
Those
parents
are
will opt
test
outs?
refusals, yes.
And remember, everybody, if you do us a favor, talk right into the mic because we get lots of complaints about people not being able to hear anyone.
So that is correct. So there were
Okay.
4 test refusals, and we're going to speak to some of that data as well as we get toward the end. So I think this bar graph gives you a better idea in terms of where our students landed in terms of the level 3 and 4 compared to other counties that are local to us. So you'll see here we're at that 38.46%, and that's generally right on mark with the other counties that are near us.
But not where we want to be.
There's always room for growth. So now we're looking at grade 4, English Language Arts, and you'll see the total number of students that were tested was 17. Last year's class was a total of 25, so that gives you an idea of
Wow.
the test refusals. And I'm glad you're kind of reacting in that way, because we've been trying to encourage as much as possible students participating in these tests. In a small district and community such as Tuxedo, when we have 1 or 2 students that don't take it, it's really a big percentage in
Yeah.
terms of how our data looks and the information
But I
that
think
we
they need
gather.
to understand, we're not grading their student.
No, we're grading the school.
This is grading us.
Correct,
When they
that's right.
And
refuse-
teaching
yeah.
us what we can do to
Get better.
teach better.
When they
Absolutely.
refuse, do they give a reason why? Or it's just a opt-in, opt-out?
In my experience over the years, it can range. You can have a parent that writes nearly a dissertation
Great.
as to all of the reasons why they don't want their child to participate, to, and I'm not even exaggerating, on a napkin, I don't want my child to take the test.
Great.
So there's a range.
Great.
So if you look at this,
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I have another question. Does how the students do on these tests, does that reflect in the teachers' evaluations at all?
that is what has changed or is in the process of changing with New York State. So our goal is to get out the real information in terms of, as you stated earlier, this is information that helps the district prepare, plan for instructional in terms of what programs we're going to utilize, how we're doing, what we need to do, what we're doing very well in, and areas that we need to strengthen. So I've certainly been having a great deal of conversations with the teachers, and just, you know, again, there's been so much that has surrounded state testing for so long, but I think it's our responsibility to truly educate everybody involved to know it's one test, it's one data point, it's not the end all or be all, but it does provide us information. So I really am a proponent of how we approach things, how we present things, really matters in terms of how our parents perceive them, even how the students perceive them when it comes time to, you know, sitting and taking an assessment.
Heather,
But
just
Wait, but she didn't answer Heather's question.
yeah, I'm just going to tell you about that
Oh,
now.
okay.
So today, the commissioner went to the legislature with the president of NICET, because there's been so much consternation over the way teachers are graded. There's 50% relies on some test data. So what they're proposing is to get rid of all that. So that's being presented, that was presented today, so we'll see where that goes. They're trying to get the legislature to change the law. That was all put in during the recession when they put in Common Core. They also put in the APPR provision, so they're looking to change all that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, both of you.
So you'll notice in the next slide, again, this is with grade 4 ELA, averaging around 64%, almost 65%. And you'll see George Grant Mason is outperforming those other local counties.
This is great to see.
Yes. Moving on to grade 5, there were a total of 9 grade 5 students, and 5 of which took the test last year. And you'll see this is very encouraging with those 5 students, 100% scored in the proficiency range. And certainly as we look at that data in terms of this bar graph, we'll see again, once again, there was an outperformance in terms of the local districts and the local counties surrounding us. This goes on to represent grade 6 ELA. In this class, there were a total of 15 students. So we had 7 refusals, 8 of which took the test, and you'll see 7 were at, or 4 were at a level 3 or 4, which had us right at 50%. So again, focusing on that level 2, there's a lot of work that can be done, and just sometimes it's a misunderstanding in terms of how a student understands a particular vocabulary word, or how they're looking at a question that may be phrased in a different way, that was phrased differently, from how the classroom teacher had been presenting it throughout the year. So those are the areas where we know we can spend some time and just provide a lot more clarity, so students are more comfortable and confident when it comes to answering a question that may appear in different ways. And you'll see. Sure.
I just wanted to make a point here. I know we talk a lot about RTI and MTSS. This would be a great data point where our RTI teams would take those high-level 2s and look at what are the interventions that we can put in place based on that test, giving us data and information on that student where they're struggling to jump them to a level 3. And then, of course, what happens in the classroom, that student now performing on grade level frees up more bandwidth for the teacher in the room to then help service everybody. So while it's just one data point, it's a really significant one for us to really try to be able to gauge where our kids are.
In addition to what Mr. Kamar just shared, the other piece of information that we get to drill down even deeper in gets us into the particular questions. So we're able to look at questions and, you start to identify, wow, a lot of students answered this question incorrectly. You can start to identify, okay, what might have been going on? How much time instructionally did we spend in a particular area? All of those things, as we do the curriculum work, helps us to build and highlight, just sometimes it's those little tweaks, but they make a big difference. But so there's a lot more data that we're able to get when we have students who are participating in this assessment.
So the whole state is getting this same assessment tests.
That's correct.
Then is the whole state is being handed curriculums and saying, this is what you should be teaching and this is how you should be teaching it?
No.
No,
They're
because
given-
we
they're
are
given
picking
they're giving
our
stan-
own math curriculum
That's what
or
they
our
want.
own English curriculum.
Right. That's what they want you to do. They give you the state standards. The next-gen standards are just being rolled out, so the state gives standards, and the individual school districts have to select the curriculum that is within those standards. So like we did with the math, so we want to be next-gen math compliant with the New York State standards. So we had a range of options of which to pick, and our teachers picked Reveal.
And that was part of the work that was done last summer.
Right.
That
Right.
teachers had the alignment of the New York State generation standards, the next generation learning standards. They had to align that to see, okay, what is it that we're teaching? Does this align with what New York State is asking us to teach? And then we went further with, now we're going to look for a particular curriculum that we can start lining up. Again, as Mrs. Carsonis, Mary Stephanie shared in the last presentation, there's no curriculum that's just geared toward New York State. So
Right.
there's always going to be where teachers have to kind of pull some resources together with the current curriculum just to make sure that all of those learning standards are covered in what we're teaching in a current year.
And the standards basically say, what do we expect kids to be able to do at the end of a certain grade?
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so right now, the ELA material that we have is becoming very dated, so we're going to have to be looking at a new ELA program. Right now, we use Scholastic, and the complaint we've got from our faculty is that it doesn't have enough phonics in it, so we're going to be looking at that. The issue is that now what across the nation is what's called the science of reading, which they're looking at all of the different research as to what's the best way to teach reading. So this is kind of a burgeoning thing that we're going to be doing a lot of research on, and the state is doing a lot on now as well. So we'll be moving ahead with that shortly.
And you're going to use that same curriculum selection process you did for math?
Yes, yes.
Which I think makes a lot of sense, getting buy-in from teachers and that, so I think that's great.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're going to
absolutely.
institutionalize that, yeah.
Yep.
So next, we're looking at grade 7. I don't have listed on this slide, but there are a total of 18 students, 11 of which took the test. You'll see that level 3 and 4 at 27%. And you'll be able to notice the numbers Again, there's quite a few students that were in that level 1. And I think, again, it just gives us more information in terms of how to focus and structure what we do moving forward. So if you look at the next slide with regard to how Tuxedo did in comparison to other districts, certainly you'll see that that's an area that's a little lower. But again, this is data. This is the point of data, so we know where we need to work on, what we need to work on, and where we need to do it moving forward. Then finally, we're going to...
Wait.
Oh.
So that's 7th grade, but they're in 8th grade now?
That's our current 8th grade, yes.
Okay.
Correct. Now, these are our current 9th graders, but this is 8th grade data from last year, April 2023. There were a total of 10 students in this grade band, 5 of which were tested, and you'll see that level 3 and 4 was at an 80%. And certainly that's much higher than it's presented across the counties. At this point,
And I just also
That's so crazy that it's
wanted
such a
to
big difference.
make another statement as well. The board has said that they want the district to be a top 100 school district. So we're looking at different cohorts in different counties, but at some point what we're going to do is collectively sit down and develop a cohort that we think we want to be like. You may want to pick, if it's a top 100, you'll pick schools like Rye, Scarsdale, Mamaroneck, and then we'll compare ourselves to them and see how we perform against that, because that's really the target of where we want to go, not necessarily how we do with New York State, because New York State is largely skewed because of New York City. And New York City, I don't think anyone wants to compare themselves with them. And some of the other districts in some of these counties are not high-performing districts, and we want to be a high-performing district. So we look like we're pretty good next to some of these others, but we want to be better.
That was one of the points that I wanted to bring up is, when we look at these slides, you're comparing us to counties that are 100 miles away, yet I don't see anything from Rockland where we could throw a rock and hit them. And I'd be much more interested to see where we compare with, versus districts like Suffern and Warwick and Monroe that are, look a lot like us socioeconomically, to see how we compare with those. The other thing I'm thinking...
And they're in Orange County, by the way, Dan. Orange Ulster, those districts are in there, in that grouping, just so you're aware.
Well, not the Rockland, not Suffern.
No, but you mentioned Monroe, Woodbury.
Right, and Warwick.
They're in Orange
Yeah.
Ulster, yeah.
But so is Newburgh, right? So
Exactly, that's my point, and
Yeah.
Middletown, exactly.
The other thing is, do you think it's time that maybe an administrator or two went to the PTO meetings and had a discussion with some of the parents about this opting out of the tests? Because I look at these numbers and I'm not sure that our statistics are significant if 50% of the kids aren't taking the test. And which kids tend to opt out? The highest performing kids, the kids that are struggling, the middle of the road? Is there no lineup between those things? I don't know. And the other thing I'd like to see is how the kids who do on these tests, how that translates or correlates to their actual grades. Are the kids that are getting the 4s also the kids that are getting the A's? Or are the kids that are getting the 2s? I just like to see how we line up that way. But again, when the numbers are so small, because not everybody's taking it.
It skews everything.
Yeah.
And it's weird looking at this and looking at grade 8 and grade 7. Grade 7, it looks like they failed out and cannot read, but yet grade 8, just a year away, that grade was stupendous.
6 and it.
Like what happened in 1 year? It was the same teachers, I'm sure. I don't understand it.
I think it's selection bias.
Yeah,
and,
we're gonna have to
we're gonna-
really work on this.
I think Dan's
point is probably the relevant one. It's
Yeah.
hard. You almost have to throw out the whole data set,
Well,
and then it's worthless.
It's also the fact that, I don't mean to be negative, because it's great to see that there's level 3s and 4s in the graphs, but what concerns me most about the data set is the level 2s and the level 1s, and you spoke to that. But are the teachers equipped to be able to work with those students to get them to where they need to be without taking away from those level 3 and level 4s. Also, how is this test, if we're looking at, okay, how these questions are worded and how we're working on that, how is that integrated to the curriculum? Because you don't want to just teach based off of, okay, let's just prepare you for this test, right? We want to prepare our students for life. But what's most concerning is it's ranging, the level 2s and the level 1s, the ones that aren't adequate, range per grade from 0% to 72%. And then, like Dan had mentioned, there's a whole plethora of students that we don't know where they land. So really the data is directional, so it's hard for you to be able to gauge where do we deploy curriculum, where do we deploy professional development. So yeah, I definitely think the opt-in, opt-out is important to get some more parents opting in.
Well, the good news is this, though, is that in the last couple of years, we put in an AIS numeracy teacher and an AIS literacy teacher. We're starting the process of RTI. We're starting the process of SEL because there is a connection between behavior and grades and behavior. It goes both ways. So the idea is when we're doing the SEL, we're trying to develop the RTI. Eventually, we're going to have a first-class MTSS, which is the combination of those two, a multi-tiered system of supports. So we are putting these things together. We just did a math curriculum, but we also don't want to overload the teachers because there's just so much stuff that they can handle. So that's one of the things we're doing during the budget process is we're sitting down trying to pace this and to figure out when, what's the priority, when to do it, when to put it in place, because there's a tremendous amount of work to do, and we have started it, and we're making a lot of progress. We are getting there. But it would help if the parents would have the students take the test because that will help us get better at teaching your students.
April 2023, April's around the corner. When is the opt-in, opt-out deadline for this year? Has that passed already? Is there still work that can be done to communicate with parents for this year, or was that, is that?
It's up to the minute. So right up until the start of the exam, we'll get test refusals at the door of the test.
And we have
I
been
think we-
communicating with people. We've been putting things out
Maybe we
in
should do
the
like a special bulletin.
Meg
Yeah,
Special
make a
McCluskey.
bulletin.
special
We've been
letter,
writing,
send it.
we have been.
Mail it.
We have been. We've been putting letters out there. Meg has been doing this through the
And we have
multiple media
history
sites.
of the parents who've opted out previously, right? So can we be doing some maybe personal outreach or, not to add more work to your very busy plate, and I'm sure you already said we know and we want to get them opted in, but I think a personal outreach, PTO meeting.
Yeah,
or even just
can we get
know
a
the
commitment to
parents.
send someone to the next PTO meeting?
mean,
I
those
don't see
parents,
that,
though,
that's not a problem,
Yeah,
no.
those
But I don't know that that's necessarily,
gonna be the most
I don't think
effective.
that every parent that's not having their child opt out is going to the PTO meeting.
I think
So
it's
we
more
can do
personal
that, we can do
outreach.
that as part of a,
Yeah.
a bigger group of what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I don't think that alone is gonna be the silver bullet, Dan.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you were addressing me with that. I just think that the parents talk to each other. You know, and the conversations about, well, I'm going to have them opt out. Well, you know, at the last PTO meeting, they came and they talked to us about
Sure.
and why it's important. I just think it's a.
I'm agreeing
It's a
with
spot,
you
yeah.
and saying we'll do that and we'll do more, yeah.
And to Alyssa's point, maybe target the, in a good way, educate the parents who are habitually opting kids out.
And I mean, parents have the right if they want to opt out, right? We don't want to disempower parents from taking a stand on their child's education. So I think it's further educating and then also empowering our administrators. Like, you guys weren't here for this. So now you're looking at this going, okay, how do we work on the curriculum and do all of that? You need data to do it, so.
To follow up on two things, how blunt are we when we communicate this to the parents about opting in or out, that they are punishing their child because if there's 10 kids in the grade and 5 opt in, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to have a very specific breakdown of their strengths and weaknesses based on that test. It's not just the end number, but we're going to know the types of areas that they're deficient in. And for the people that opt out, they're punishing their child because their teachers are not getting this available information. So I think people are afraid my child's not going to get a good number when that's not really the reason for the test. The reason is to assess the child. Am I missing that, or is that?
Yeah, some of the things I'm just jumping to. We had some concluding slides that will address some of the things we're talking about, and I think it's just important to jump to these now, and I can go back to some of the Regents data, but we're talking about a lot of great points here. We recognize that with testing, a lot of people have some really strong feelings. I don't certainly, from a parent's perspective, want to infringe on their belief if that's their stance. I think our role of educating them, a lot of folks feel when we think about historically, especially since Common Core has rolled out, over-testing, thinking about how APPR and teacher performance and evaluations are tied to the exams. What we can share with families is we've heard those messages across the board as a state, and some of the things that we've done, they cut down the volume of the test. It's now just a 2-day test for both ELA and math and science as a 1-day test. And we spread the lab component, the performance component of science across the year with their labs. So we were able to cut time that way. Some of these exams were designed by the Board of Regents and folks that maybe weren't in the classroom, and that was a clarion call from NYSET to say, hey, who's designing these test questions? So New York State licensed educators, teachers are designing these exams. One of the things parents felt we know is that you timed the test, and this became by virtue of stressor on my child and wasn't maybe an accurate measure of what their ability was. They were racing the clock. We untimed the exam. Students have as long as they want to finish the test. So I think really proactively, these are some of the things that we highlight. I know Ms. McCluskey's been a media campaign since December, sending out monthly points from state ed about some of these topics. Mr. Castricone, to your point, I think we can do always a better job of how we communicate. Certainly with the PTO, we'll reach out and connect with them. I think that's a great idea. Jeff mentioned there's always more stuff that we can do to educate families and try to get them to see. Here are the reasons we think you're not taking it and why we think we fixed that. In addition, here's how we use these tests beyond just what the result is. We're assessing student learning. We're gauging how we're instructing our kids. We're looking at our viable curriculum and how we deliver it, and is there a better option for us? So while it's just one data point, it's a really strong one that can help us make all of those internal decisions. So.
And we've also started to look at, as you just asked the question, do you look at how they do, say, on a Regents versus the class? We are looking at that now. And there are some kids that suffer from test anxiety. We get it. But we're looking for, is there a trend here? And we're seeing there are some trends about Regents exams being here and a class grade being up here. So we are looking at that too.
Yeah. And to the points about not just looking at this state exam, or if only 50% of the kids took it, how do we make most informed decisions? And Dr. John Paul and I have a lot of conversations about triangulating data. State exams are one data point. Our report cards are another data point. Teacher input's another data point. And then our locally based assessments from Renaissance or iExcel or our Dibbles or Fontes and Pinnell for our reading levels. We want to take all those data points, and in a perfect world, you'd see a flat line that they all line up. But typically, you'll see maybe they outperformed a little better on their state exam, but their reading level's a little lower, but their math score's up. We want to get all that data into one dashboard for our teachers and have that dialogue with our TI teachers, our special education staff, and our general ed teachers, so that we can really use them as a diagnostic per student to best deliver instruction for each kid. So that's the work we've begun and will embark upon across the rest of this year in the summer. And usually it's a 2 to 3 year cycle to really get your hands on all of that and get a deep understanding. But it progresses kids and puts us in a good place. So.
Quick question.
That'll be some of the
Can I get my second question?
Sure, go ahead.
My second question is a little bit tougher. Are you aware, is anybody aware of any data or studies, whether it's a small district like us or any other district, but when the participation numbers go up or down, how does that change the percentage of 1s to 4s? So is there any state data that you're aware of that if 80% of the kids take it versus 60% versus 90%, your numbers go up or down. Is it the ones not taking the test or the twos?
Maybe if
or-
there's data around weighting.
What's that?
Level weighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really.
Like, so what can we,
Yeah.
why-
It's
that
so-
means nothing to me unless I have something to compare it to.
Yeah.
But I don't know if those studies exist or based on your experience,
Yeah.
if all of our kids were to take this test, are numbers going up or down?
Yeah, it varies by cohort, right? So.
Right,
One of you just had mentioned in some cohorts, maybe a lot of students with IEPs decided, I'm not taking that exam. Typical for like 7th grade math, a lot of high-level kids are saying, I'm gearing my curriculum towards that 8th grade algebra test, I'm not taking the 7th or 8th grade exam, right? So it kind of just depends on the test, the cohort, and having all the data in front of us and having the conversations with our educators, our school counselor, our RTI folks. Our people know our kids. We'll talk about, I know geometry was a score of concern that I noticed, and just in quick conversations with the teachers, our math teachers and our school counselor, we were able to look at the 14 kids of the exam, who took it, who transferred out, who got an IEP since then, who is now receiving increased supports. So when you see the kids and the number, there's an explanation to it. But the kids all taking the test helps us trend across multiple years and cohorts to get a really good picture. So a short answer, it depends, right?
But outside of us, are there any state trends or county trends? The higher percentage, we're so small, I think the numbers are skewed.
Yeah.
But statewide, we're talking if 1,000 more kids took the state exam, does anybody have the information of what would have happened to the state papers?
I don't think so, Gary. No. And our N is so low, it's, and when a kid drops out, as we know, it gets skewed
One kid,
completely. Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question. You had mentioned this is the first year for the next-gen testing. Have there been changes to the tests that have been made over the next year? Like, do we expect this next year to be different, a lot different, where we're kind of setting it baseline again, or something that we can take and then compare again to the last year?
We should be able to compare last year's
okay.
results to this year's results.
Perfect.
across
Good.
next gen,
It should be
depending on
pretty
the
similar.
exam, right?
Okay.
Because the high school's rolling out by course.
Got it.
So not every course is there yet.
Great.
Right.
And just in that comparison, note that this is the first year 3 through 8 is taking this
The next gen.
computer-based
Right.
testing as well. So
Got
that's a transition for students. And,
Got it.
over the time, although this is a STEM district, there's still a transition for students
Yeah.
taking a test in a different format.
Absolutely.
So something to just consider even
Yeah.
as we look at next year.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you.
We had a class graduated 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been at this a while, and they had different standardized tests at the time, but you could see that one class as a wave all the way through. Every year it was always, wow, this year 7th grade did great. Next year 8th grade did great. The year after that 9th, because our numbers are so small that sometimes I wonder if we overreact to some of what's wrong with 6th grade. Well, last year, what was wrong with 5th grade or 4th grade? And there just might be a higher percentage of IEPs in one class or a higher percentage of really high performers in another. It's hard with these numbers.
That's why it's really important to us over short time here that we use multiple data points, right?
Yeah.
One number that does have us a bit excited is if you look at 1920, in some districts, there's just a culture of opting out. And it's really, really hard to combat that. If we look back to 1920, of course, that's a percentage, but those are pretty good numbers. So what we want to see is, as Dr. John Paul pointed out to me earlier, is the trend back down. So you see from 21-22 to 22-23, there was a decrease in test refusals. We want to trend towards that 1920 number, which was probably about a handful of kids that refused all 3 exams and about 7 students that refused the science test, which is pretty good across the district, right? So that number would give us a better snapshot of overall where we are. So
That's our Tuxedo,
That's
Tuxedo numbers.
yeah. So,
Great.
with that, this was such great dialogue and such valuable conversation. I know we have some of our Regents data. I'll just skim through some of this quick for you. This was last year's Regents results. You'll notice Tuxedo's highlighted in all of these slides at the top, and then the rest of the county is alphabetical. And we were kind of across the range. 5 of the 9 exams our students performed highest across the county, which is probably the most exciting stat to me when I look through these. ELA happened to be one of them. 94% of our kids achieving level 3, 4, or 5. In the traditional exams, they were across levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and with Next Gen they added a 5, which the 5 just replaces exceeding above grade level, right? Our algebra scores coming in at 81% ranks us, I believe we were tied for 4th across the region. And Dr. John Paul pointed out with the 3-8 scores, we would look at certainly those level 1s and 2s, what's happening with that cohort. That would be the dialogue we'd be having with our content specialists, our RTI team, our AIS folks. What's going on with that? I want to know about that level 1, what's happening there. Who are our level 2 kids? How are we looking to move those to level 3s? Are they in our extension classes? Are they receiving AIS instruction? What are the supports look like? So those are some of the conversations and dialogue that the data will help support for us. Algebra 2 coming in 70%. This is the geometry that I mentioned that when I look at the 8 students that took it, that number stands out to us, the 5 students that were at the level 1. Several of the students were predictable and they trended that way across their 3-8 assessments, in their algebra scores as well. And then there were a couple kids that you know, had some things happen with them specifically that kind of were explainable, that you would predict an academic drop-off across their year with different things that maybe happened with them personally. So
To get a finer point on what you just said, have we looked at how those kids did during the school year versus how they did in the Regents? Like, are they consistently performing poorly or above average throughout the year and then doing the opposite on the test?
Yeah, so that generates those kinds of conversations with our math team, looking at the cohort, the specific kids, how do they perform on the report card. Some of them are explainable, and what we also want to do is, how does that trend with those kids when they were in algebra versus this course versus where they head next? To Dan's point earlier, what did that look like historically? And you know, if you see this trending across one content over multiple years, then we really start to focus on and look at instruction, delivery, what does that look like? But there's some good explanations with this cohort of kids, because that number got our attention and prompted some dialogue, right? Live and environment exam. This was another one that we outpaced the county. We were number 1 in the region with 93%. Earth science at our 88% was also best in the county. And as Jeff had mentioned earlier, you know, we certainly are proud of that and want to compare that here, but we also in future discussions want to compare against other high-performing districts and where this falls. And when I think about our Regents diplomas and advanced types and honors types, these are things of you know, where we can improve and grow and increase our scores. Chemistry at 73%. And global was another one that, global and US, I believe, led the region. Global was tied for first, and US history will close with that one 100%. When you think about 19 students taking that exam, pretty good score to be proud of right there. So.
Congrats to our history teacher.
I was going to say the same thing. Who is the teacher? of
Mr.
that class?
Fitzsimmons.
Mr. Fitzsimmons. 100%. Awesome.
All right. I think we covered a lot of ground there. A good place to close. Are there any other questions that we can answer?
Thank you for presenting.
Thank you.
This is great just to see this.
Thank you, everybody.
Like your eyes.
Yeah.
agenda time?
I think just a quick one, Superintendent. Sure. Very, very quick. Okay. All righty. This is the time of year when our George F. Baker seniors begin to solidify their plans for next year. We're proud of all our students. Some have identified collegiate enrollment as their post-secondary plan, and others have chosen to pursue admirable vocational pathways, including culinary arts and apprenticeships with trade associations. Some of the institutions that our students have been accepted to include, but are not limited to, Rensselaer Polytech, University of Connecticut, Pratt Institute, and a presidential scholarship to Rochester Institute of Technology, as well as the Culinary Institute of America. Please feel free to visit our website for the full list. We have quite an impressive list of the colleges that our students are getting accepted into and our career-ready kids are going into in terms of their professions as well. In terms of the next thing is, I wanted to say we have another big piece of great news. We're proud to announce that George Grant Mason Elementary School has earned the National Certificate for STEM Excellence, campus certification from the NICE Institute. This credential adds to George F. Baker's acquisition of the same distinction in May of 2022, making Tuxedo the first New York State school district to earn certification at both the elementary and the high school level. GGM STEM teacher Mariah Klimowicz was instrumental in completing all the steps required to secure the certification with the guidance of Mr. Marco Margata, who's with us. Anything you want to add to that, Marco, or is that enough? Okay, perfect. And then just finally, we had the Humanities Award.
Real quick on the STEM, reading a press release and
We're going to be doing all that,
PR.
yes.
Great.
We're waiting for the actual certificate, and we're going to get a banner.
Perfect.
So it's another another big win for
Great.
the district on our way to the top 100.
Perfect.
We did have the Humanities Award breakfast, was it yesterday or day before? Yesterday, okay. They're all starting to blend into each other at this point. And the two winners for this year were Casey Wansey and Madison Marsh, forgive me. So there was a change this year, so some were a little bit upset. The BOCES Instructional Council, which includes all the curriculum folks throughout the county, got together and they made a change. It had historically been seniors who got this award, but these folks felt that it would be great to have the juniors get it because they're applying to colleges. So I know that there are some people that are disappointed, but I do want to congratulate Casey Wansey and Madison March.
Okay, great. So now we'll move on to the consent agenda, starting with the personnel consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve as written?
so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. Now we will move into the consent agenda for business. And just one moment, I need to take a quick look here. Okay, so we're going to amend item 6.7. So we're going to pull that out from this consent agenda and come back to that one after after executive session.
Motion to adjust the...
May I have a motion to adjust the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so
I had a question on are we going over 6.9 also?
we can go over that. Yep.
The pay schedule was listed as Appendix A, but it wasn't in the documents.
Okay.
For what's the nursing?
Yeah, it referred, like the contract referred to the actual pay, like see Appendix A, but there was no Appendix A.
Okay.
Do you happen to have that, Chris?
I don't really need the whole appendix, I'm just wondering what the before I approve it, I want to
Yeah.
make sure it's not $400 an hour, that's all.
No, it's 5.
It's
No,
five.
I'm
Yeah, I
not.
was just-
It's if you don't mind, what we'll do is we'll table that one till
Yep.
after exec,
Okay.
and then
Okay,
Chris
I
will
don't
be
need,
able
I
to
just
grab it,
need
yeah.
that bottom line question
Okay,
While
so-
we're pulling things
Mhm.
out,
Yep.
can I take a look at 6.4, the capital proposition,
Yes, so shall we discuss?
if you don't mind? I'd
Okay.
just like a little clarification on exactly what we're going to be spending and what each item is going to cost.
Jeff?
So, as Tom mentioned, he doesn't have a detail of each item, but he did list those items that are going to be in that. Did you,
I didn't see the auditorium in there.
it's in there.
It's in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All
the
right.
auditorium
I'll
is
go
in
back.
there.
I saw that, okay.
It's in the proposition, yeah.
All right,
And
so I guess my question is that how much is left in the
Probably
budget?
and it's the capital reserve.
capital reserve.
So, probably this project, the roof is gonna be about 650, so that'll leave about 1,350,000 left,
1,350,000.
approximately, yeah.
And the roof right now is somewhere around $600,000.
650, yeah, around that, yep.
And we're looking at depletions based on his number of,
It will be within that 650,
Well,
within that
650,
area,
okay.
yeah. Mhm. So with that 135, I don't think we'll be able to get everything done. We just list the projects that we're going to do, but I don't think we're going to be able to complete the auditorium and the vestibules, and, we're going to get as much as we can. We're going to bid the work out. You don't know where the bids will come back, and we'll adjust accordingly.
and
All
that's
right.
going to leave us approximately 1.3.
Well,
For
yeah,
any
well,
other-
once these projects are gone, it'll wipe that out completely. So
And
then,
how much is left? Yep.
and after we finish that up, Will, then we're either gonna use, the transfer to capital money, which will be in the operating budget, or we could bond,
How
or,
much is in the transfer to capital right now?
well, I believe that was in the $60,000 range.
78,000 was what?
78,
yeah.
thank you, ma'am, about $78,000, yeah, if that works out with the budget. Right, but we have, just so you know, to put in perspective, I don't think we've done any major capital projects since at least, it's either the late aughts or the early 2010 area, around the time when Greenwood Lake left, and in the last year, we've done somewhere in the neighborhood of near 2 million or more in capital projects, so we are doing quite a bit of work in the buildings.
I understand. I guess my question is with all of this, the flow out, is that we have a major problem with our roof over the GGM building. It's a complete disaster. And obviously, our engineers are going to get there shortly.
Yep, that's
So,
right.
and I'm sure it will be assessed. I'm sure it will be assessed from the inside out and the ground up.
Right,
The question is, we don't have an idea on how much this is going to cost.
right.
So my point is I just don't want to deplete any reserve money or, transfer to capital money that's going to be necessary to tackle this problem.
Yeah, and if we have to, if it's decided by the board and we want to do a project on the roof here, we can always do a bond as well. That's another option as well. There are various options for us to address different projects. And as I said, if he does the building condition survey, we will have a complete picture about where we are with all of the repairs that the district needs. I will say this, the building condition survey from 2015, I believe at that time was about, don't quote me, it was around $8 million back in 2015, which is the last one that was done. And there's been nothing since then. So you can imagine that has only, if you defer maintenance, you're just adding to it. And then on the $8 million, I think I did an analysis for the board in a boardgram, just the inflation factor on that 8 million, if we did nothing else but that, it's significantly higher. So we have a lot of work to do in the district in terms of facilities, and we don't have enough money for that, for all that work. We just don't. So we have to address that. It could be a bond, or we could wait for the, as the build-out happens with the Tuxedo Farms and the assessments increase. There's different ways to do it, but we're not going to settle that in one night.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we have
We have
issues
quite a
that
bit to
need
do.
to be addressed
We're
sooner
well
than
aware of
later.
it. We're well, yeah,
So,
absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
I'm just curious what our engineer's going to say.
Sure, yeah, we all are, absolutely.
I mean,
just-
it'll be helpful when we get the building survey done and a prioritized list from, an independent party. I think that will be helpful. Sorry, Dan.
No, we're on the same page. I just wanted to follow up with, nice to haves and have to haves. And the clock tower is nice to
Yeah,
have.
That's the reason.
But the
why-
roof here, the kids, I guess, moved out of the kindergarten class into the library because the ceiling was leaking. I mean, this is a must-have. I don't know that we should be spending on.
That wasn't a roof leak, Dan, that was I believe, a unit ventilator, and that was repaired.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
But either way, I guess the point is that I can live with a pink auditorium as long as we don't have soffits falling off the building.
Well,
That's-
I think
that's
our
kinda-
list has kind of been given to us because it's every other week something breaks and then we have to fix it and
Right.
that's where the money's going. So we're not getting a choice right now.
We
on
definitely have some
anything.
broken things around here. I can take you.
We do.
No,
and
I know, but
then
I'm
we-
just saying it's
the
like.
clock
it's
tower is
when the
definitely a
emergency
choice.
Yeah,
comes, when
that's
the
the
emergency
reason why.
comes.
And we
do
discussed
it.
all these, things last year as well,
Right.
and
That's-
agreed to
that's
them.
where I'm going.
Yep.
Because it's raining and we're leaking.
Yeah.
And the actual leak is due more to, it was the wall work that Tom showed you before. And that's the work that we put in the transfer to capital. That was that leak, those leaks over there. That's what we're going to be addressing there. Yes, that's right. Yep.
Well, we definitely have soffit work and we have to make sure that we're keeping our uninvited guests out of the building.
We have more work than we can shake a stick at. We do. We absolutely do. And we don't have
I don't
enough,
want to beat this too much more, but like I said.
and we don't have enough
I
money
can
to do it.
live with a pink auditorium, but I'm definitely going to need money left over for the roof.
Okay.
You know, it's
Yeah, and I'm not, I would have appreciated more of a breakdown on those three items.
Yeah.
When we went over what we're gonna spend this money on, it was, the clock tower, the roof over at GFB, and one other item that was on there, the vestibules, right? I would have liked to have seen that broken down in such a way where I could know that, the clock tower is 30 grand or the clock tower is 300 grand, So
quite
I-
frankly, I don't think the work should be done until we really have those numbers.
Well, we can certainly, the architect was here, we can certainly get him to give us that information. A lot of these things also were discussed last year. Clock tower was supposed to be part of the roof work on GFB because we were already up there, we had the scaffolding up there. We don't have enough money in the capital reserve to do both roofs. That's why we did the flat section only, because the architect did last year give us a very detailed about what the roof work would cost, because that's what we were initially going to address. Now we changed our mind. There's also been discussion about acquiring another parcel of land. The board approved 2.5 million and a 40-acre piece of land. There's been a lot of discussions with the town. None of this stuff is new. We've been talking about potentially working with the town to acquire Quarry Field for a potential new building in lieu of putting money into a building that the lion's share of this building it was designed to be a 100-year-old building, and guess what? It's 100 years old. And the gymnasium, it's, as the architect has told us, this is a money pit. It's a money pit. So if you want to spend $1 million on the roof and potentially tear it down, it's a waste of money. So I think what we need to do is we have to, and we're going to do it, it's a plan, we want to develop and we've spoken about this, so it's not new, that we were going to put a committee together of the community to look at where the future of the district is going to go and where we want to put the money at. So,
I couldn't agree with you more. It
And-
sounds like a wonderful idea.
yeah.
But the point is, we do need dry classrooms, and, some things are.
And that's what he was addressing right there with the work over here. It was not the roof that was leaking. As in the classroom you mentioned, it was a leak of one of the mechanical items. And then the other leak that you're referring to upstairs, Tom showed you, it was the masonry work. And that's
Correct.
what he put in there. Right, so it wasn't the roof, it was the masonry roof. It was the masonry work, okay? All right, any other questions?
No, but we're not proceeding with each of these projects right now. We're not like signing off on each of these individual projects. We don't have without an estimate. This is the plan that we're putting into action, but this is not saying, okay, tomorrow we're writing a check for these.
No,
items.
what happened is, we have a capital reserve, and last year we put together a capital reserve plan. We had a lot of discussions about it, and we put it before the public, and the public voted on it, on a capital reserve. We did one a few years ago, it was Capital Reserve 1. Last year, the public approved, I think it was 70% for Capital Project Reserve 2. We listed each of the items. It passed, like I said, 70%. And again, you first have to approve creating the reserve, and then you approve the next year the spending of it. So this is the second component, which is we're going to say, now we're going to spend it on the items that we agreed to spend it on last year. So if we're going to change what we're going to do, then that means we have to go through this whole process again, and we're going to have a new one, and then we're going to have to do another year to get the spending agreement. But again, all this stuff had been discussed in the past, so it's not like we're just doing this off the cuff.
You've said that a couple of times, but the actual amount that I'm very uncomfortable without some order of magnitude on how much of this is for this and how much of this is for that.
Sure.
I don't want to spend $1 million on the clock tower.
Yep. Well, no, if you saw the credit was $26,000 for the clock tower.
So
Okay.
that's what I'm asking.
But let me, well, it was there. And secondly, the critical thing here that we want to get done is we want the security vestibules done.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. So that's what we want to get approval from the community, and that's the first thing that we're going to be spending money on. And again, we're going to bid the work out, and then we'll know exactly what it's going to be. The architect can do estimates. They can do estimates per square foot. You know, this is what it typically costs. But like anything else, until you actually put the bids out there, you won't know the exact numbers.
And those bids will come in front of the board and we'll decide.
Exactly. That's right.
Mr. Rensinger will have we're looking at about a year before we have a full structural analysis of all of our buildings.
So we're going to do a building condition survey. He'll probably do that this summer. He did do a visual inspection. The state, it was a stopgap measure. Every 5 years, you have to do a building condition survey. And what the state did, because they were requiring it of every school district, all 700 at the same time, which was overloading all the architects and the engineering firms. So they got the bright idea of saying, hey, why don't we break this up, and we'll do pieces of every 20% per year for 5 years. So we did a visual inspection, so we have some idea of what we have to do, which is enormous, by the way. And then now he's going to do the official building condition survey. And based upon that, that is one of the components of creating also security. There's some other things that go into what's called a 5-year facilities plan. And then we'll have that, and with that, we'll be able to say, it's going to be multi-million dollars. You're talking, in 2015, which is almost 10 years ago, it was $8 million. And if you look at the escalation of construction costs, that number, and I did an analysis on it, which I said you weren't on the board at that time, was significant, and that didn't even include anything new. And as the years go by, more stuff falls apart. You follow?
Oh, it's falling apart.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, listen,
Yeah.
I
In
don't wanna go round and
question
round and
is,
Hey, I
is
believe this
the item
district,
6.3.
has suffered from decades of neglect.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealt a bad hand here, there's no
It's gonna be
question.
a bumpy ride going
It's gonna be.
forward. I understand.
Yep.
And just so you know, we're getting things done. Okay? In the last 2.5 years, we've done almost $2.5 million of projects.
Very happy with that. Hopefully,
Yep.
we can continue to do so.
Last year, you wouldn't have had heat if we didn't do the EPC, what we did it, the energy performance contract, so.
So any rumors that children are getting wet during rainstorms are not true?
What I said was that there had been leaks. There was
But
one
today,
in the
as of
elementary.
today, as of today.
As
if
of
there were-
today?
If there was a horrible rainstorm tonight, tomorrow there's no kid getting wet in any of our classrooms.
As Tom mentioned to you, there is pointing work. He showed you a picture of it, which is why we're putting the money in the transfer to capital.
That's something that wasn't on that plan.
There could be some leakage through there. That's why he identified that as an issue.
But short of that plan, the roof, gutters, anything else, everything
Gary,
else?
the roof has passed its warranty. The roofer won't even guarantee you that. So if you're asking me to guarantee you that, and I'm not a roofer or a roofing manufacturer, I can't guarantee you. This building is, like I said, it's a 100-year-old building, and it was designed for 100 years. It's there. You
But if there's a
follow?
hole, if there's a hole in the roof today,
Of course, we'll fix that.
we got to fix it.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm
It's an
saying.
emergency, and that might
And
come out.
and we've had those happen,
Right.
and we have fixed them. There was a leak here. There was a tree that fell on this building, and we repaired it. We had insurance proceeds, and we patched that up.
We're fighting about things in the far future. I want the public to understand if there's a hole, a new hole starts today, we're fixing that tomorrow or as soon as we can.
Of course, and we also have available to us if something occurs, we would certainly tap one of the reserves or our fund balance. We would declare an emergency, as we've done with the floods, right? So we do react. So we had 2 floods. We reacted immediately. The board declared an emergency. We got the proper people in here, and we addressed it. We've shown you that twice already, okay?
In answer to the question 6.9, just to, so we don't have to table it for after, it's $85 an hour for RN, 65 for an LPN, and I just shared with the board the whole tax rate.
Okay.
Okay, you just got an email, okay?
Just wanted to make sure
So we
it wasn't
don't have
some
to worry
crazy.
about
Do you still want to table it, or do you want to, you ready to go?
Information, I want to make sure it was
Good.
reasonable.
Those are in line with market, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so can we've taken out a couple of items here.
Thank you.
I think it was just, well,
Just
No, the
6.7.
6.7, okay, so the 6.9, are we resolved because we have the,
which one is that?
Yes.
okay,
That was
wonderful.
the
That's
nur-
the
the
nurse
nursing,
contract. Okay, so
Quick
can I,
question on 6.8. I just
Okay.
want to know the scope of the outsourcing here. It's a special education outfit out of Monroe.
That's
I
6.8?
can answer this a little
Thank
bit
you.
more of a
Yeah.
spec, like for Ken, and only because I've worked here before. So basically, when we have a bilingual student that needs,
Okay.
you know, like
Evaluation.
a Spanish evaluations for CPSE or CSE, we usually have BOCES come in. With BOCES coming in, they usually charge about $3,800 for them to do the whole entire assessment. Sharon Jolly, who does a lot of our CPSE, also does K through 6, and they're half the price. So we're doing a single service contract with them because we probably only have 1, maybe 2 a year, if at all, and it would be half the cost of what it would be with BOCES.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the,
Can I ask one more question? I
Yes.
apologize. 6.1, the calendar, and I hate to
Yeah.
go into the calendar. There are 2 days on that that are listed as no school for students and early dismissal. Can we just reconcile those? That's October 31st and December 10th?
there's no way that there's,
No, they're half-day, so they're half-day in service for the teachers. but they're-
Professional development.
Okay, so the
Yep,
kids, okay.
half day.
Yeah,
So both
there's
can
no
be true at
school,
the
but
same
then
time.
teachers, yes, they have professional development.
Thank you.
Which,
We're good.
as you can see, we very much need, and we're moving forward.
And you can, yeah, there's a copy of it in the folder, so.
I got it. Thank you.
great. Okay, who wants to make the motion?
Motion
I don't
to,
know where I lost track.
We are, a motion to approve the consent agenda for business minus item 6.7.
didn't we
So
just?
moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No. Okay. Excellent. So, we're moving into items for discussion, budget work session. Okay, so on item 7, it's looking at the budget work session. We have 2 scheduled on April 10th and May 8th, both at 7 p.m. in the GGM multipurpose room. There's no discussion here.
Well,
we
this
wanna-
is
do we
just,
wanna
you know, we have
I
2 calendars that the board approves. One is the regular meetings, and we do that at the beginning of the year, or the end of the previous year, and then we do the budget calendar. So all we're doing is we're just making sure, highlighting for everybody that you're aware that we do have budget workshops on these 2 dates, that's all. And I think,
we have to be there?
Yes.
Oh, I can't be
there
May 8th.
Kimberly, you make me feel bad. You don't want to come to our budget meeting?
I think we also
We,
were
okay,
looking at a
so we wanted
date
to ask
change
if,
too,
if
right?
those 2 dates also work. They had been approved earlier, but we can change the dates if this doesn't work for the group. I know we've had, I had one call about the 10th, so if we want to change either of these dates, we can do that. Does any,
Because the other date then didn't work for 2 other board members, so.
which, the April or the June?
The April 10th or the 11th, we were trying to
Okay.
see if we can switch. The 11th didn't work for 2
Okay.
other board members.
Now, just so you know, this is just supposed to be a budget work session unless something happens, an emergency roof repair or something.
Yep.
We'll
we'll-
get there with a patch.
So right now, it's just planned to be a budget workshop. We hadn't planned on it being a board meeting. So if it's easier for folks to join by way of Zoom, we could certainly do that, or we could change the dates. If you just let us know, we're happy to do it.
I'm good for the 10th or the 11th, but I know others have conflicts, so.
I have a conflict on the 10th.
All
Okay.
right, can we do this through email or?
Will that work? Will we all email and
Do
get
we
set on a
get board
date?
approval of either? Can we settle on a date that, do we need to vote on that?
Well, technically, you already did. Okay, so but to change it, you should. But
Set both
I'll
dates
I'll
and cancel
defer
one.
to
I
our
will make them
attorney.
all work.
Vote it? Okay,
Set both dates and cancel one.
there you go. All right, so we'll do April 10th. Let's add, what's another date that works for everybody in April? And then we'll cancel one after we do,
We have our regular board meeting on the 18th, the Thursday.
That's right.
Right? But
Yep.
we needed a
Correct.
week.
yep,
This time?
we want to go over the budget
Yeah.
information. So is there any other date that week that works for everybody? We'll put it down, and then we'll cancel one of them.
Does the 9th work for everyone?
Works for me.
No? Okay.
I can do that.
I can do 8th or 10th, but I'm okay with, I can input.
I could do the 8th.
I
That'd
could
be
also
great.
do the 8th.
I could do the 8th.
Everybody the 8th?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll add April 8th, and,
7 PM, I presume?
Yep.
Great.
okay, is May 8th work for, well, you has to, because that's the hearing.
Yep. So
Okay.
then, yes.
Wait,
Okay.
so
All right.
what dates are we
So
writing
you have to
down?
amend
What's-
So
the
April
item?
8th, we're gonna add down to just
Okay.
to vote on to have that date or the 10th and see which one's gonna work out the best.
Can I have
Or
a,
are we agreed now that the 8th is
The
it?
8th.
8th?
So I'll make a
Let's-
motion to amend to the 8th.
Thank you.
please.
I will second.
Okay,
All in
7
favor?
PM? Aye.
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 Okay, great.
7 PM?
Yep.
And can I have a motion to
Yes.
enter into executive session?
So moved.
And then the only other date was the 8th, May 8th.
May 8th,
Wait,
but that's the
May 8th,
hearing.
I
Mhm.
can't do May 8th.
So that's.
That's the hearing.
Then
Okay, I don't need to be here.
Or you could Zoom in, either way.
No, I mean, no, I can't.
Okay.
So
heard
can I have a
enough.
motion to enter into executive session?
Yes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Will we be taking action?
of a particular person. Do I have a second?
I second that.
I am in favor of that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Got a quorum, we're good.
Okay. Oh,
We could potentially take an action
And we may potentially take action.
when we come back.
after executive session, aye.
Great. May I have a motion to return from executive session?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve item 6.7 from the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, lastly, may I have a motion to add a resolution that we discussed about the annual ballot, add it to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to read the resolution. Be it resolved that the following proposition be placed on the ballot at the annual meeting of the voters of the Tuxedo Union Free School District to be conducted on May 21st, 2024. Shall the Board of Education of the Tuxedo Union Free School District be authorized to change the term of office for one board seat at the May 20th, 2025 annual election of the board members only from 3 years to 4 years in order to equalize the number of board vacancies each year. Therefore, thereafter, the terms of the office will be 3 years for all board vacancies. And be it further resolved that the district clerk is authorized and directed to cause this proposition to be published in the remaining legal notices in the designated newspapers.
I move to passage of that resolution.
I make a motion to amend that resolution. I had it in my head and now I just lost it.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
It's because it's after 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's,
The terms?
Maybe she should
Give him
read
a second.
or look at it.
Do you want to?
yeah, just let me look at it again for a second. There was
this is a
something
copy
that
of it.
as I heard you reading it,
Okay.
that you missed, I thought.
Could have missed it.
Oh. I make a motion to add to that resolution that the 4-year seat should go to the candidate that achieves the highest number of votes in that election.
Okay. Excellent.
we skipped
May I have a
second.
motion to add this resolution as amended to the agenda?
Motion.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll
Um,
move that now newly amended resolution and its adoption.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So
Second.
moved.
All
Aye.
in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.